Why is the Victorian era often portrayed as dark? Hello? Why is the Victorian era often portrayed as dark is the focus of the video we're showing today. Before anything else, please like this video and follow our YouTube channel for further updates. Despite the great socioeconomic inequality that characterized the Victorian era, industrialization brought about quick changes in daily life that had an impact on all social strata. Family life was ardently idealized, with the youthful Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and their 9 children serving as its shining examples. To a research report published in October 2019, the 1880s were Britain's most upbeat decade. However, the most well-known depictions of Victorian life are very depressing. 5 unexpected facts about the lives of the urban poor in 19th century Britain were exposed. Rosalind Crone, in a piece she wrote for the Christmas 2015 issue of BBC History magazine. The most well-known depictions of Victorian life are depressingly grim. Underprivileged children, toiling long hours in mines and factories, fog hanging over congested towns, terrifying workhouses overseen by ruthless governors, murderous criminals lurking in the shadows. People from all socioeconomic backgrounds appear consistently glum and old black. White photographs, a miserable lot, surely? This portrayal contains some elements of truth. Some people's living standards did decline as a result of the twin processes of industrialization and urbanization, and the volatile decade following Queen Victoria's accession to the throne came to be known as the Hungry 40s. Economic depression during this period caused social discontent, mass protests, and escalating revolution fears. These feelings can be attributed to the collision of 3 distinct processes. The first, which brought urbanization and industrialization together, produced striking visual impacts. The development of print culture, which gave these images a platform and a captive audience, was as significant. The rise of a reforming spirit among the social elite starting in the 1830s was the third and equally important factor. Because reformers like Dickens, Disraeli, and Gaskell, as well as journalists and MPs, aspired to address such social issues, grave images of hardship were widely disseminated. But was life so bad? Did the working poor think they were going through particularly hard times? Social historians have put a lot of effort into giving voice to those at the bottom by locating fresh data and giving previously published information a new perspective. By doing this, they have refuted some of the bleakest depictions of urban Victorian Britain. Number 5. Were the mills truly sinister and dark? Workers toiled in hazardous mines or industries, but conditions significantly improved. When the topic of employment in the Victorian era is brought up, images of imposing factories or desolate mines run by ruthless bosses where workers, even young children, are made to put in long hours while working dangerous machinery are frequently conjured up. It is a picture that has been painted by books like Charles Dickens's Hard Times, by government investigations like the Ashley's Mines Commission in 1842, which revealed dreadful moral and physical circumstances, and by scandals involving actual companies throughout the century. However, is it true? Not completely. Early 19th century industrialization lowered salaries and increased the employment of women and children, particularly those under the age of 18, in the manufacturing sector. Number 4. A means of escaping poverty. Not all the poor were destined for the horrifying workhouses. One of the most iconic pictures of the Victorian era is of Oliver Twist, who is excruciatingly hungry, pleading with the cruel workhouse beadle, Mr. Bumble, for gruel, following the new Poor Law of 1834, which attempted to limit government spending on welfare by discouraging the needy from seeking help. Charles Dickens published his novel. Families were divided up in the workhouse, which was where people in need were sent by the local relieving authorities. Hard labor was forced upon those who could work, and substandard care was provided for those who couldn't. A harsh discipline regime was applied to everyone. There were some awful workhouses. Local law enforcement was convinced that poor people broke windows or purposefully tore up their uniforms to be sent to prison, where the lodging and food were better. Number 3. The dirt fight. Living conditions for city people become worse as a result of urbanization and industrialization. Pollutants were released into the air and water by new industries. Population growth put further strain on the system's sewers. Neighborhoods that were too populous turned into slums. The most notorious locations, like St. Giles, Old Nickel, and Jacob's Island in London, as well as Angel Meadow in Manchester, were immortalized by writers, journalists, and artists. Some of these locations even appeared in Baedeker's renowned tourist guides. At the beginning of the Victorian era, it was understood that such issues needed to be addressed. Protests from inhabitants of ground, floor and cellar flats affected by sewerage overflows during heavy rain must be added to reformer Edwin Chadwick's inquiries. Thomas Munns wrote in 1842, "I saw them bring up guts in a bucket and lay them out on the earth, and bones were brought up, which were put in a barrow and carted away," describing how recently interred dead were turned out daily to make room for the stream of new corpses. Number 2. When crime paid. Exaggerating the threat presented by the criminal class was a lucrative business for newspapers. The majority of the most well-known nasty anti-heroes of the 19th century, such as Fagin and Jack the Ripper, are fictional or partially fictional, even though the Victorian era has come to be associated with crime and violence. The fears and assertions of the Victorians about a sizable, hardened, barbaric, and generally irretrievable criminal class in towns and cities have mainly shaped our perceptions today. Henry Mayhew and John Binney, two well-known early Victorian social scientists, boasted that they had gathered 150 of these beings in a room, creating a spectacle of squalor, tatters, and wretchedness. Some were kids, some were young men. The deep, set, partially averted eye that is indicative of innate dishonesty and cunning was present in many. The majority of the boys had hair that was fairly short on the head, indicating that they had just been released from prison. The notion of the criminal class gained scientific legitimacy with the rise in popularity of phrenology, a pseudoscience that largely focuses on measuring the human skull. Number 1. A country recovers from its sickness. Poor Victorians in particular ran a significant danger of contracting some deadly diseases. Measles, scarlet fever, smallpox, and typhus were the majority of the common killers that had plagued Britain for generations. However, the crowded and unhygienic conditions brought on by fast urbanization contributed to the spread of these infectious diseases, as well as other gastrointestinal ailments such as diarrhea and gastroenteritis. In addition, life expectancy declined in the second part of the 19th century after having previously shown long-term gain. In the industrial cities of Manchester, Liverpool, and Glasgow, it had decreased to about 27 years at the beginning of Queen Victoria's reign. According to calculations made by the Cambridge Group for the History of Population and Social Structure, the 1830s and 1840s had the lowest life expectancy rates in urban slums since the Black Death. The high rate of infant mortality served as the main justification. A third of youngsters, and more than half in some impoverished areas, pass away before turning 5. The high infant mortality rate contributed to the rise in the number of births. Having additional children, however, could not ever make up for the emotional loss of those who were lost, as evidenced by the letters, diaries, and memoirs of men and women from all spheres of society. Then there were reports of food adulteration, such as the use of plaster of Paris in boiled sweets, horsemeat in sausages, or the use of chalk or alum in white bread, which were encouraged by an uncontrolled sector under pressure to sell prepared foods for low prices. The biggest abuses were, however, stopped starting in 1860 by new legislation on food standards. In any case, The working classes were mostly unconcerned about the majority of low-level adulteration because they had acquired a taste for various rogue products. How was the video? Do you like it? Post your response in our comments section below. And subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.